Carlos and Ryan, and we know that you're dying to hear what we have to say today. I say we hear what we have to say today. It's the blank. Fill it in. Fill it in. Fill it in. Yeah. Young world, what's good? This is Carlos. I am in Ghana, Africa. As you can tell, clearly not with Ryan. I'll give a scope around as to what I'm doing with it. So, yeah, that's me right there. No brag, no nothing, That's how I roll now. There's a new episode tonight, so check that out. See what my boy Ryan's got in store. But I will be back, not next week, the week after, to catch y'all up as to what I've been doing. The internet situation's been pretty crazy, so that's why I haven't been posting up updates, but I'll let y'all know. But yeah, fill it in.
Get my mic, loud and clear. But hello, young world. It's Ryan from the blank. Unfortunately, just another week without Carlos. Unfortunately, here. I hope you enjoyed the preliminary video. He did happen to, find some internet out there and get us a little bit of what he's doing. So I'm glad. I hope you enjoyed that. Best wishes to him. He's having a great time, and we're definitely looking forward to kind of hearing about all the stories when he is back, which is going to be dope. But yeah, he looks good. If you agree, leave a comment, and I'm sure that he'll be able to see it from afar. But yeah, just to kind of a couple, a minute or so, just to kind of see how he's doing it itself. So, check out the episode. Hit him up if you can on Instagram or whatever it may be. I'm sure he'll be able to see everything from there. But thank you for another week. Carlos and I, definitely do appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts, even though he's not here to say it. And he probably needs to say it a little bit more often to our audience, because, we do have, quite a bit of you that do happen to listen on a regular basis. So thank you. It means the world to us. It really, really does. Just a couple preliminary things. This episode's not going to be extremely long like our regular episodes, because I feel like I can't do the justice without Carlos in this case. But I do definitely want to speak about a couple of things before we do happen to, cut it short, as I would like to say. A couple things that have been going on just in Toronto, the world in itself, and I know Carlos and I usually do the current events together, but I feel like these are certain events that need to be spoken about before, or, I guess if it's too long or too late, then it may get missed down the line. So I guess the very first thing is that, homegrown Toronto. Unfortunately, a 16-year-old boy happened to lose his life at Keele Street Station on the TTC. And Carlos and I have definitely talked about a lot in the past with Toronto violence, just the lack of, mental health services and the lack of funding for it specifically within Toronto. We have a lot of random occurrences that are just happening within Toronto in like the last year that's really scary for individuals to be able to walk around safely, which is a hugest issue. And, just the other day, 16-year-old boy just kind of minding his own business happens to randomly be stabbed, by somebody while waiting for the TTC or while waiting for the bus. And it's a scary thought, especially for, a 16-year-old that has his whole life ahead of him. I did happen to watch a couple of interviews with his parents, and he was a very loving child, supposedly had a great head on his shoulders and was really looking forward to going to university and pursuing his career, and just being a person in that case, and for me to be able to put myself in those kind of shoes, it's a scary thought. Like, now Carlos and I have both lived 30 years of our lives, and I'm not saying that we don't have our lives ahead of us, but it's a really unfortunate circumstance and a really unfortunate story when you happen to hear that. So, rest in peace to him, the individual. I forget his name, unfortunately, but, condolences to the family, because it's a super, super, super sad situation. I hate to start it off, or at least with the second story in itself, but we also have another unfortunate one. And Carlos and I have also gone back and forth as well with, the amount of school shootings that have been happening recently within the world. In America, recently in Nashville, unfortunately, there's about a 20-year-old individual that happened to walk into a public school and take the lives of a couple of children, as well as some teachers. If you haven't read it, definitely go check out the news articles on it because it's a very, very sad story. Children as young as 4, I think, and 5, always happen to lose their life, and more individuals that have their whole life ahead of them or did have their whole life ahead of them. It's just a really, really unfortunate circumstance. It's crazy how to think about countries out there that have these rules in place and legislation in place to be able to try and protect their citizens, when it almost feels a little bit backwards with the amount of times that this happens to occur in the freest state, like the USA, of the world, right? Like it's the America, the freest state, the ability to be able to kind of do anything, and then we really allow individuals to cause certain violence and certain atrocities within their own home, and it affects so many different people. I can only imagine having to be at a school where something like that happens during the time that you happen to be there. It's a really scary thing. Some condolences to the families, the people who happen to lose their lives and everyone else that was affected in that sort of case. I can't imagine. Like, I'm so glad. Canada's definitely got their own issues, and we've spoken about these in the last podcast or in previous podcasts, but it makes me super glad that we don't really have to run too much into issues like that. Even though I previously just brought up, the whole kind of, random stabbing on the TTC, which is, unfortunate. But it's really a crazy, crazy thing. Carl's definitely, I'm sure from afar, will give his condolences as well. I'm sure that he's probably living it up out there, but to be able to express that and just to say it out loud for us, hopefully it gets out there in some sort of sense and people can start realizing that, there are bigger issues than the small things that they're happening to try to blame it on. I don't want to get too much into the politics because of the person that happened to do the shooting, and then how sort of politicians are sort of dealing with it, especially in the news. I'm sure that maybe Carlos and I will bring it up on the episode when he comes back, but it's just one of those things that's just an overall sad situation, and then the backlash to see from these politicians and the society and what's going on over there. It's incredibly sad. So enough about that. In technology news, this is just the last thing I'm going to bring up because I don't want to make this episode too long. But with Carlos and I, we're talking about how we're with AI and ChatGPT and kind of all the new technology where it's sort of creating almost like a robot brain, or like robots out there for technology to sort of think by itself. And we know that's not at that point at the moment, but eventually it may hit to that point. That's what Carlos is so scared of, and he states it all the time about it. But it's funny because the news article that came out recently was how Elon was just saying that he wants to put a stop to the technology of AI, and how we need to put a pause on the advancement of it. And it's crazy like that because guys like Elon are like the reasons why humanity sort of advances in itself to a certain point, and how we become so dependent on technology where it's the regular day part of our lives. Like, it's just integrated to the point where society cannot realistically live without it. And then now that we have this sort of potential concept of chat GPT and artificial intelligence and everything that comes with it, it's like now that one of the superpowers in technology is telling us to put a halt to it. And I'm sure that there are certain like external reasons why he's saying those certain things, why he wants to put a stop to it. Maybe it's political or whatever it may be, but it's crazy to think that, the people that happen to put us in these certain situations are the ones that want to kind of hold us back. And, Elon he is just a regular human being at the same time, but the amount of technological influence and the influence that he has in the world, people may take this sort of thing seriously. Carlos's opinion, he's definitely fucking. It's like, man, fuck these robots, right? Like, we shouldn't be advancing them in the first place. But honestly, the greatest thing about, humanity and the way that we happen to evolve is by, testing and by creating and the advancements in technology. It's like we have to allow those advancements to be able to come across and then be created, and for us to be able to test it, and that's when we can be able to see the flaws in it. It's almost as if humanity doesn't learn until it's too late. And that is sort of a flaw in itself to the way that humans sort of work and then realize technology. But that's just the kind of way that we go about it. So I really don't agree with Elon in this case, where we're trying to kind of hinder or stop technology's advancement itself, especially something so great like GPT and artificial intelligence. Like, all of those things are so fucking nuts. Like, I can't even put into like great words or like proper terminology, but it's such like a crazy thought process that we have things like that, and then that they've created it from us. We've spent the years in like making the technology and all of those things. It's absolutely wild. So definitely go check that out if you are interested. Some technological news. There's always stuff going on specifically, but I think that one's the one who caught my interest the most as of recent. I think AI and that whole sort of part of technology where it's being robots being able to talk to you and create conversation, and people using it to cheat on their college essays and stuff like that. I think that stuff is an advancement that we need to keep approaching, so that eventually it makes us better as individuals. Whether it hinders us to a certain point, I feel like humanity always ends up evolving past the flaws after the fact. So definitely one of those things that I'm interested to see. I'm hoping that maybe it starts writing our descriptions for us in the future, or, writing me better scripts instead of me having to talk about off the top of my head with these the podcast. But it's an interesting thing if you are interested. So check it out. I would love to hear any sort of comments, concerns, issues from anybody that happens to be listening that is interested in that concept. Because without Carlos and him talking reckless and all the crazy shit he'd be talking about, those are the things that sort of interest me in itself. So now just to get into a little bit of what I did want to kind of speak about, with Carlos being gone, there's a lot more, I guess, less editing. You can tell by my office here, our studio, it's a little bit of a mess because I haven't been taking care of it because Carlos hasn't been here. So don't mind the clothes. Still got the poster up and all that. But one of the things I've been doing is looking at a lot of, trying to learn on YouTube, and just many different historical documentaries, just things on different aspects in the world, things like maps, Julian Assange, privacy, milk, which was another fucking topic that I was looking into the other day for some odd reason. And I definitely want to get into that one day, so please look out for a future episode, because I really want to get Carlos's perspective on that. But it's crazy, the whole sort of milk push in the 90s and the 80s. From the government and the world at that kind of point, just to give you a little bit of a hint of what I'm talking about. But there's so much knowledge and information that's accessible for us to be able to see. Like, I watched this whole documentary the other day on flat earthers, and I'm not going to get too much into that because my whole opinion is I'm a huge on science and things like that. But it's crazy how there's so much information out there for us to be able to acknowledge and to see and to learn from, and to I would like to say, revisit, take in, and then see if we can advance it and make it better in any sort of sense. So, like, the way how, like, sort of scientific journals have, you can put out a scientific journal, and then another scientist department takes that experiment, and then they try to, disprove it or retest it just to make sure that it's real. Kind of like that. It's like there's so much information out there that human beings have now accessible due to the internet, due to social media, libraries, encyclopedias, websites, whatever it may be, news articles, without any sort of bias, even though it's pretty much impossible. We have to be able to kind of use those tools to be able to advance ourselves. And I think that one of the most important things, and Carlos and I do mention it, in our episodes, and this is just me talking from the heart, is that, us as human beings and us as individuals in these worlds, we have to be able to kind of recognize that there are certain tools in our life and just certain things that we can use to try and make us better as people. You know, even though it's such like a small kind of speck of dust in the amount of time that we're realistically here on Earth, or you know, in this kind of space that we're in, you know, use it to your advantage. There's so many different things that can be done to hopefully better yourself if you feel like you're down. Like, you know, nobody's perfect. I'm not saying to kind of hate yourself and tell yourself you're a piece of shit or whatever it may be. But it's just there's so much out there that can potentially be helpful to us as people. You know, whether it's videos on the internet, you know, books. Like I'm a huge, you know, avid fan of books, and I promote reading as much as possible because it really changed me as an individual in that sense. But I really just want to put out there to our listeners and the people that happen to be listening to my, you know, confession tapes as of today and maybe next week. But that'll stop when Carlos gets back here. But anyone who happens to be listening to these in itself, I really hope that you can take back with you from this podcast that it's like, it's not, yes, we are trying to be funny and we are trying to just, you know, make jokes and talk about current events and all those sorts of things, but it's really just to be personal with people. Hopefully that you hear that what me and Carlos are talking about is really stick from the heart. And Carlos and I are always trying to better ourselves every day, be a little bit better than the person that we were yesterday. You know, and definitely that doesn't always work, and we probably backpedal 2 times or 3 times more than we should be advancing. But it's just the progress in itself, and then trying to use those tools to be able to get there. Yeah, that's realistically all we wanted to say. I think that, I guess, a recommendation to bring it back to recommendations. One of the main sort of YouTubers or the main sort of pages that I've been looking at out of recent is an individual by the name of Johnny Harris, a wonderful journalist on YouTube that happens to provide great video docs, short films, I would like to almost say, or short documentaries on certain aspects of, you know, what's important to him. And I find like that information is just important in life in general. I mean, not to everybody, you know, it's not for everybody. Go check him out. I would highly, highly recommend. I've learned a lot just from his videos in the last couple of days. But something just to think about, even if you disagree with the stuff, it's just the way that he approaches the video, the way his approaches to just providing you the information is very soothing. It's very smooth in itself. And he provides information where he's trying to be at the least biased as possible. Yet again, almost impossible to be able to give any, or to not give any sort of bias when you're happening to promote, you know, certain sides of a story, but he does it extremely well. So I think that that's someone that I would highly, highly recommend. If you are looking for those certain tools that I was speaking about earlier, just the amount of information that's out there, and especially coming from Johnny Harris himself, is stunning. Honestly, it's like, you know, changing my perspective on a lot of things, or making me rethink some of the things that I thought when I was younger, or, you know, the things that even I was going through as a kid. I'm getting an understanding of it now and where it comes from and the background of it realistically. So, extremely, extremely highly, highly recommended if you are interested in that kind of stuff. So, check it out. That's all I really gotta say on that. But I'm going over a little bit longer than I thought I was, and I'm thinking the mic level is a little bit too loud. But I just did want to leave this as another short episode, one of my confessions episodes. This is kind of the things I've been going over the last 2 weeks without Carlos being here. And yet again, we are looking forward to him. If you did not see it, or you scrolled forward past it because it's only about a minute or so, definitely go back to the beginning of the episode after our intro song, just to listen to him, because you know, he's looking great out there in Ghana, having a wonderful time, and yet we miss him. We really do. So thank you, Young World. Appreciate the time again. You know, Confessions Tape Ryan, Volume 2. My next one will probably be me telling you all of my mental issues and how I need to go to therapy and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, listen to that for the next episode. So I definitely do appreciate you tuning in, cutting it short, and then we'll see you in the next one. So thank you, everybody. Pieces.